"No, Miss Dalton, I won't sit down." The classroom froze. 14-year-old Elijah's voice cut through the air like a blade, trembling but unyielding. What happened next would unravel secrets hidden behind the locked doors of Jefferson Junior High and expose the unimaginable truth about a boy dismissed as a troublemaker, but who just might be a genius. Why was he standing? What was he protecting? And what had the teacher tried so hard to cover up? This isn't just a story about numbers. It's about justice, courage, and the moment one quiet student refused to be invisible any longer. Before we begin, if this is your first time here, please support us on our journey to reach 1,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter, about talent, truth, and transformation. Now, let's step into the story that shook an entire school. It was already 9:03 when Elijah rushed into room 214, the last student to arrive. His hoodie was damp from the rain, his shoes squeaked against the linoleum, and the deep shadows under his eyes betrayed a night of little sleep. "Late again, Elijah," said Miss Dalton, her voice clipped, practiced. "Take your seat." Elijah hesitated at the doorway, gripping the strap of his worn-out backpack. His eyes darted across the classroom, then back to the teacher. I'd like to stand today, ma'am." Miss Dalton blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'd rather not sit. My back is—" "Elijah," she interrupted sharply. "You are not special. Sit down now." The room grew still. Some students exchanged glances, a few smirked. Everyone knew Elijah, not for his grades, but for always being in trouble, for falling asleep in class, for being quiet, and then suddenly loud. He was the unpredictable one, the broken one. But today, something was different. "I can't sit," Elijah repeated, voice low but steady. "It hurts." Miss Dalton folded her arms. "We've been through this. You skipped attention, failed last week's quiz, and now you're playing games again?" "I'm not," Elijah said, his voice cracking. Can I please stand?" "You want to stand?" she said coldly. "Then solve this." She turned to the whiteboard, wiped away a simple geometry question, and began scribbling a long, twisted equation filled with symbols unfamiliar to most students. "This," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "is from our senior calculus class at Eastview High. If you're too special to sit, maybe you're special enough to solve it." Laughter rippled across the classroom. One boy fake whispered, "Yo, Elijah's about to crash and burn." Another muttered, "Dude doesn't even do homework." Elijah stared at the board. The numbers blurred for a second. But then, something clicked. He'd seen these symbols before. Not here, not in this school, but at the library. In the thick blue book he'd hidden behind comic shelves. In the pages he photographed secretly with a borrowed phone. In the late-night YouTube videos watched under his blanket, earbuds in, while his mom worked the night shift and his sister snored softly a few feet away. "Elijah?" Miss Dalton prompted, her voice smug. "The floor is yours." He stepped forward. Inside him, fear and fury collided. He remembered her ruler slapping the desk beside his hand. He remembered missing lunch because she'd kept him after class. He remembered his mother saying, "Just stay quiet, baby, don't make them mad." He took a marker, and for the first time in a long time, he wrote. First slowly, then faster. His hand moved with awkward certainty. The room fell silent as students leaned in, the scribbles on the board becoming less chaotic and more clear, structured, mathematical. No one spoke, no one laughed. Even Miss Dalton froze. And yet Elijah kept writing, step by step, as if walking a path only he could see. As Elijah underlined the final answer on the board, a stunned silence hung heavy in the classroom. Miss Dalton blinked at the problem, then at him. Her mouth opened, then closed. "You? Where did you learn that?" she finally managed. "I just solved it," Elijah said softly, returning the marker to the tray. The class stared. No one laughed. Not this time. "Impossible," she snapped. "You've never scored higher than a C on anything in my class." Elijah didn't answer. He didn't have to. The proof was on the board. Plain, precise, undeniable. Miss Dalton's face flushed. "You must have copied it. Who helped you cheat?" "I didn't cheat." The words came firmer now. Elijah's shoulders, usually slumped in defensiveness, now stood squared. "I knew how to solve it." She grabbed a red marker and drew an angry line through his work, almost violently. "Principal's office, now." Elijah didn't flinch. He picked up his bag, still sore from the bruises along his spine, and walked out without another word. Behind him, the room remained silent, except for the soft gasp of one girl near the back. Nobody knew where Elijah went after school most days. Nobody cared. But if they had followed him, they would have seen the truth. 3 blocks past his apartment complex, tucked between a shuttered laundromat and a donut shop that never opened before noon, sat the public library. Not much to look at. Old stone steps, flickering lights. But to Elijah it was sacred. He'd discovered it by accident, ducking in to avoid a thunderstorm. The librarian, Mrs. Keene, had offered him a dry towel and a seat. She never asked why he came alone, or why he read silently for hours and left just before closing. Over the past year, Elijah had devoured everything: math textbooks, physics guides, articles meant for college students. Mrs. Keene would quietly slip more advanced books onto his table without a word, as if she knew. "You've got a sharp mind," she once said. "Don't let this world dull it." He didn't tell anyone. Not his mom, who worked back-to-back cleaning jobs. Not his little sister, who thought he just liked cartoons. No one in school would have believed him anyway. So Elijah studied alone, by the dim light of his cracked phone screen, by pages bookmarked with old receipts, by instinct and hunger. Because for him, numbers made sense in a world that often didn't. They didn't shout. They didn't hit. They didn't lie. They simply were. Elijah sat alone on the cold bench outside the principal's office, his hoodie pulled up, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on his jeans. Inside, behind the frosted glass door, voices argued in muffled tones. "He's manipulating the class," Miss Dalton said harshly. "He refused a direct order, disrupted learning, and then somehow produced a solution to a problem far beyond his level." "And you're absolutely certain he cheated?" asked Principal Reyes. "I've taught for 22 years, she snapped. "A boy who can't even follow simple instructions doesn't solve advanced calculus overnight." Elijah closed his eyes. "You always have to be twice as good to be seen as half as capable," his mother had once told him. "Especially when you're quiet. Especially when you're different." The door creaked open. "Come in," the principal called. Elijah stepped into the office. Miss Dalton was seated with her arms crossed, her body stiff with authority. Principal Reyes, a tall man with a salt and pepper beard and eyes dulled by bureaucracy, gestured toward the chair across from his desk. "You're in here a lot, Elijah," he began, "but today is different. Miss Dalton claims you cheated during class, that you solved a problem far beyond your curriculum." "I didn't cheat," Elijah said quietly. "I solved it." The principal's eyes narrowed. "How?" "I've been studying, on my own, at the library." Miss Dalton scoffed. "And what exactly have you been studying?" Reyes asked. "Calculus. differential equations, some linear algebra. You expect me to believe that? Miss Dalton interrupted. When you can't even be bothered to show up on time or complete your regular homework? I don't do the homework because it's boring, Elijah blurted, then instantly regretted it. Miss Dalton's eyes widened. Excuse me? It's just, I already understand most of it. I do harder problems on my own. I don't mean to disrespect you, I just didn't think anyone would believe me. You're right, she said coldly. I don't. But then, a knock at the door. The secretary peeked in, eyes nervous. Mr. Reyes, sorry to interrupt. There's a visitor here to see you. Says it's urgent. Not now, he replied. He says he's from the university. That made both adults pause. Moments later, the door opened again. A man entered, a bit disheveled, with curly gray hair, a tweed jacket, and a kind face behind thick glasses. Dr. Emery, the principal said with mild surprise. From the math department? Sorry to intrude, the man said, but I believe you're discussing one of my unofficial mentees. Elijah's eyes widened. Dr. Emery smiled gently at him. Hello again, Elijah. I've been meeting with Elijah twice a week for the past 4 months, Dr. Emery said, his tone calm but deliberate. We've gone through topics most undergrads struggle with. I can personally vouch for his understanding. Miss Dalton looked as if someone had slapped her. You're telling me this child, this boy, has been privately mentored by a university professor and no one at this school was informed? Dr. Emery didn't blink. Because Elijah asked me not to. He feared he wouldn't be believed, or worse, punished. Principal Reyes rubbed his temples. This is a lot to process. If what you say is true, Dr. Emery, then we owe Elijah an apology. But I need something more concrete. Dr. Emery nodded. Then give him a test. Today. Make it difficult. Sit him down, no books, no phones, no internet. I'll supervise it myself. I'll prepare it, Miss Dalton snapped. And I'll make sure it's appropriately challenging. No, Dr. Emery said gently. You won't. She stared at him. Elijah's already under enough pressure. We need a neutral test, free from bias. You may not mean harm, Miss Dalton, but your judgment has already been compromised. Principal Reyes looked from one to the other. Finally, he nodded. I'll arrange a separate room. The test will be prepared by our district's lead math consultant. It will include advanced problems, and the session will be monitored by both Dr. Emery and myself. He turned to Elijah. You don't have to do this, but if you want to prove them wrong, this is your moment. Elijah hesitated. His hands trembled slightly, but then he remembered the laughter, the red slash through his answer, his mother's tired face, his sister's wide eyes. I'll do it, he said. Later that afternoon, in a quiet conference room on the second floor, Elijah sat alone at a long table. A sealed envelope lay in front of him. A clock ticked steadily on the wall. Dr. Emery stood by the door, watching quietly. You ready? Principal Reyes asked. Elijah nodded. Yes, sir. He opened the envelope. The first page was simple algebra. He flew through it. Page 2, trig identities and geometry proofs. He worked methodically. Page 3, integrals and rates of change. Page 4, full calculus. By the time he reached page 5, differential equations, his pencil was moving like it was dancing. The outside world blurred. There was only logic, flow, pattern. This, Elijah realized, is what peace feels like. After exactly 48 minutes, he put his pencil down. The room was silent. Principal Reyes took the papers. We'll review these tonight. You'll have your answer tomorrow. Elijah stood, tired but light. For once, he didn't feel like he was running. He felt like he'd arrived. The next morning, Elijah walked into school with his hood down. The hallway felt different, lighter somehow. Fewer whispers, fewer stares. He made his way to the office. Waiting inside were Principal Reyes, Dr. Emery, and, surprisingly, Miss Dalton. A copy of the test lay on the desk, filled with Elijah's tight, careful handwriting. "Sit down, Elijah," said the principal. His tone was softer than before. "We've reviewed your test, all of it." Elijah sat slowly. "Every answer," Reyes said, "was correct. And not just correct, insightful. You used multiple solution paths, explained your logic clearly, and even caught a misprint in one of the questions." Miss Dalton's jaw tensed. Dr. Emery smiled. "I've taught hundreds of students. What you did yesterday wasn't luck, it was talent, raw, brilliant talent. I didn't cheat," Elijah whispered. "No," Principal Reyes said firmly. "You didn't." He looked at Miss Dalton. "Well?" he asked. She didn't look at Elijah. "I may have misjudged him." Dr. Emery raised an eyebrow. "That's all you have to say?" Miss Dalton finally turned to Elijah, her face a strange mix of shame and pride. "You embarrassed me. And I let that turn into something ugly. I thought I knew your type. I didn't. I'm sorry." Elijah didn't answer right away. He didn't know if he could forgive her. Not yet. But he nodded. Principal Reyes cleared his throat. "Effective immediately, Elijah will be placed in our Independent Gifted Studies program. We're working with Dr. Emery to create a custom track for you, with access to college-level resources. And, Doctor," Emery added, "if you're interested, I'd like to continue mentoring you and nominate you for a Regional Youth Mathematics Fellowship." Elijah's hands trembled. I'd like that." "There's more," Reyes said, his tone now serious. "We need to address what you said in class, about your back, about the pain." Elijah's smile faded. "I fell," he said quickly, eyes darting. "Elijah," Dr. Emery said gently, "you don't have to protect anyone." There was a pause. Then, slowly, Elijah lifted the back of his shirt just enough to reveal 3 dark welts. Miss Dalton gasped. "No one falls like that," Reyes murmured. His eyes met hers, cold, unforgiving. "We'll be launching an investigation." Miss Dalton stood abruptly. I need to speak to my union." She walked out without another word, but Elijah didn't watch her leave. He looked at Dr. Emery, at Reyes, and for the first time he felt something strange, safe. Word of Elijah's math test spread quickly. By the end of the week, he wasn't invisible anymore. In the lunchroom, students nodded at him. In the halls, teachers gave polite smiles. Some still didn't understand what he had done, but they knew it mattered. But what Elijah cared about most was this. His mother came to his parent-teacher meeting. She sat beside Dr. Emery and Principal Reyes, hands still calloused from her third-shift job. She listened quietly as they spoke of her son's brilliance, his future. She didn't say much, but when they handed her a folder labeled Gifted Placement, her hand trembled. Outside the school, she hugged Elijah tight. "I always knew you were something special," she whispered. "But now the world knows too." Elijah smiled, but something inside him still ached, not just from his back, but from the years of silence, of being overlooked, of swallowing words that burned his throat. At home, he opened a new notebook. The first page was blank. He didn't start with numbers. He wrote, "My name is Elijah. I used to be afraid of being seen. Now I'm afraid of being forgotten. But maybe, if I keep learning, if I keep helping others like me, I won't have to be afraid of anything." Weeks passed. Miss Dalton never returned. She had been placed on administrative leave. A formal investigation followed. Elijah never asked what happened to her. He didn't need revenge. What he had now, respect, freedom, possibility, was worth more than anything she could give or take. One Friday, Dr. Emery invited Elijah to speak to a group of middle schoolers struggling with math. Elijah hesitated. "I'm not a teacher," he said. "Just tell them the truth," Dr. Emery replied. "That's more than most adults ever do." Elijah stood before the group, nervous, sweaty palms. But then he saw them, the quiet ones, the slouchers, the kids with hidden notebooks and tired eyes. And he spoke about patterns, about fear, about how the world tries to define you before you understand yourself, and how sometimes you have to solve your own equation to prove you even exist. When he finished, the room clapped. But one kid didn't clap. He raised his hand. "How do you get people to listen to you?" the boy asked. Elijah smiled. "You speak loud enough to echo in their silence." What would you have done if you were in Elijah's shoes? Have you ever seen someone underestimated just because of how they look or where they come from? Tell us in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else. And hey, we're on a mission to reach 1,000 subscribers so we can keep sharing powerful stories like this one. Hit that subscribe button, tap the bell icon, and help us grow this community of truth seekers and change makers. Thank you for being here.